All right. Hey, everybody. Eric, first of all, thank you for the kind words. And I'll tell you what, every one of us on this call has a story to tell. Every one of us has, we have a message of depth and weight to be able to carry. So God bless all of us for being sober. God bless all of us for being here. Right, Derek? And Derek, I'm just sad for you, buddy. I'm sad that Donnie just sort of just did you in there, man. It wasn't even close. She was up there. And I was cheating, of course, because I had my phone with the AA app on there going, what the heck? She got it faster than I can put it in there. So anyway, everybody, Pat Alcoholic, glad to be here. And it's going to be a fun adventure tonight. I was talking to Eric, I was talking to Tyler and a few others, and God's been doing some, every time I read this big book, and I read it all the time, and I go through the steps quite often, and I take people through the work as we do on all the guys on this meeting. But God has given me a new perspective, a new experience, if you will, with step two. And we're going to be talking about step two tonight. We're going to be talking about insanity at a level that when I see it in myself, I see it when I see it in myself, or I see it in my sponsees, or I see it with people that are struggling. I think if we could see what we're up against, I think our ability to go into 3 through 12 will be a gamer. It'll be a game changer. And let me ask you guys a question. Half of the instructions up through 103 are on step one. And it is just keeps on putting more and more evidence to us all the time. Pat, you are insane. Your body is insane. It's asking for a substance that is literally killing it, right? Thumbs up. Do you agree? Pat, you have a mental obsession that is telling you to go back to the very substance that's killing you, and you have absolutely no power, no choice, no control over the allergy or the obsession. You're without defense. You're without defense. And this obsession is plain insanity. Do you agree? Now, the third part is we have a spiritual malady. We have this thing called untreated alcoholism. We know a lot of people on this call know exactly what I'm talking about, but it's spiritual malady. It's an untreated alcoholism. It is present day lack of belief that God could do God stuff in our lives that is significant, that is impactful, that could change our lives. We also call it agnosticism. And we have these things going on, and I'm unmanageable in my spirit. I'm unmanageable in the way that I conduct myself internally in my innermost self. We're going to talk about the bedevilments a little bit tonight. And we're going to talk a little bit about how this applies to the inventory process. And we're going to read a section out of Bill's story. So yeah, I know I'm bouncing around. Yeah. I know that we're jumping a little bit, but just hang in there with me. I think it'll be worth it. So, it's really an interesting thing. In Bill's story, from pages 1 through 9, he's telling us about his step one experience. Would you guys agree with that? And then I'm looking at the book, and I'm looking at pages 9, 10, 11, and 12, and the top of page 13. And guess what step Bill is talking about in all those pages? Step two. And I don't think I ever saw it as clearly. And I was talking to Tyler a little bit, and I'm just playing this out. I'm not sure if I'm going to camp out on this, like this is my firm belief, but I'm telling you, there is a lot of evidence that Bill is making a point. Reader, please. I spent half of my story telling you what the insanity of the drink or the drug looks like. I want you to understand the mental side. I want you to understand the physical side. I want you to understand and be introduced to the spiritual side. But I'm going to spend 4.5 pages talking to you about step two, the bridge between no solution and no power to all solution and all power. Step two. See, we're going to go from insanity to the very consciousness of the presence of God in step two. And it's quite a leap if you think about it. And I want to sort of wake me up. I don't know if you guys need to be waking up, but here we go. There are some words, and I do this I think it's a good discipline. Outline the chapters when you read the big book for yourself. Outline them. See what God's doing. Take a look at a theme. Take a look at a word. Take a look at a direction and see if you can't follow it through in the text. And so what I did, and I'm just disclosing exactly what I did, is I sat down and I'm trying to piece through in my own mind what I would call this step 2 experience. And it's like I'm going through a field. I'm going from my old life to a new life. I'm going from my old way of being, which is insanity, to a new way of being, which is protected and loved by the care of God. And I don't know how to get through what I would call a field of land mines. Okay? We got landmines that are jeopardizing our sanity. We got landmines that are blowing us up, and we need a map. We need a map to get through these landmines. Would you agree? Does that make sense? Would it be helpful if we had a map? And when I'm reading this and I'm talking to God about this, it's like he's unfolding some ideas, and I think they may be helpful. You guys be the judge. This is the first time I've ever rolled out this stuff as far as a talk. So, I'm just going with what God's doing. Okay, so we'll just play with it. So, landmines. See if these words you can identify with. These are some words that come right out of we agnostics, okay? These are words, one after another, from page 44 all the way to page 57. They're just words that are in the text, and see if you think that maybe possibly these might be jamming us up. Doubt, prejudice, avoidance, rejection, abandon, we haven't abandoned, prejudice, obstinacy, sensitiveness, unreasoning prejudice. By the way, that word prejudice keeps showing up. Antagonism, resistance, vanity, wholesale condemnation, intolerance, fettered by superstition, tradition, fixed ideas, biased, unreasonable, self-sufficiency, worshipers of everything. This is an interpretation. Worshipers of everything except for our Creator, everything except for the Creator. Reason, in other words, the God of reason. Dishonesty. We don't diligently search within ourselves. There's fear, and then there's some additives of self-pity. There's some self-seeking, there's self-delusion, and then closed-minded, this is out of Appendix 2, closed-minded, intolerance, belligerent denial, unwillingness, dishonesty, contempt prior to investigation. Now, what do you think of those words? I mean, they're all throughout we agnostics. And what he's trying to lay out for us, I think, is, Pat, you have no idea what you're up against. You don't know how big the beast is that you're fighting. You think the beast, the biggest beast of all, was in the alcoholic allergic reaction to the drink, the physical substance? Pat, that's not the biggest beast. Pat, you think the biggest beast is the obsession of the mind, that is plain insanity, that you'd be driven back to it, strange mental blank spots, and you can't stop it from happening? Nope, Pat, that's not it either. That's not the beast. That's not the beast that's taking you down. Oh, yeah. That's the impact, the final story, the final outcome. Absolutely. We drink and we die. That's a fact. But before that, we have all these words that he's throwing out. And then one more place to throw it to you. And I was writing these down as well. And of course, when I want to see it, I can't find it. Hang on a second. Okay, this is on Bill's story, page 5. He uses the word to describe insanity, and he says crazy. He uses the word in page 6, the morning terror, the madness. And then he talks about how he's feeling inside, remorse, horror, hopelessness. His brain raced uncontrollably, hell. He uses the word hell quite a few times in his story. We're going to talk about that. Hell, agony. He seeks escape. He's tortured. It's hellish. Can anybody identify with those feelings? Can anybody identify when we're presently sober, but we're not feeling solidly connected? Now, the interesting thing is God's always there. God never went anywhere. God's always there. It's just that we got our eyes closed. and we're not experiencing the love and the power and the guidance and the direction from our Father. That's just the bottom line. I use our Father because that's what the text uses in the Keystone Decision. God's going to be our Papa. He's going to take care of us like nobody else could. I need a big daddy to walk with me going down a bad street. I need to know I got the baddest daddy in the land. I need to know that my daddy could pop anybody and take care of anything wherever I go. How about you? How about us? Hellish. Page 7, he uses the word, he feared for his sanity. And then finally on page 8, he says, I was plunged into the dark, loneliness, despair, bitter self-pity, morass, quicksand, master. Alcohol was his master. He was overwhelmed. He emerged from the hospital a broken man, and the insidious insanity of the first drink. That's what we're up against. Can you feel that? Can you feel the flavor of what Bill's trying to throw down there between we agnostics and his story, Bill's story? Does that make some sense so far? All right, so that's sort of the setup where we're going. And the next part that I want to go to is this journey that we need, this map that I need. It's got to safely be able to address when I came into the rooms, the last thing I trusted was God. When I came into the rooms, the last person I wanted to hear from you that the solution, Pat, to your problems, your solution to your life of torture, your solution to the insanity between your eyes and your brain is going to be a loving, vital, real experience with God. And on page 29, it's reading and I'm going, wait a minute. They're telling me that every story in this big book's about one thing, how they form their personal relationship with God. I don't want to hear that. As an agnostic, for the last 10 years of my drinking, I didn't have an experience of the power of God. Can anybody relate to not feeling like you didn't have the power of God working? God, please keep me from drinking today, from using today. God, please, please, please. And did it work? No. Dr. Bob had it for 2.5 years, and he has a solution right in front of him. He doesn't understand what the problem is, but he had the solution right in front of him. And so this bridge that we're going to is taking me from, and I just wrote down a couple of things. We're going to go from a place where there is no God or no God of power in my life, and we're going to journey to the other side. A willingness to believe that there is a power greater than myself, a willingness to believe that there is a God of my understanding that is more powerful than me. Because, folks, we don't have the juice to fight the spiritual malady. Selfish self-centeredness, I don't have the juice. I don't have the ability to deal with the cunning and powerful and baffling features of this disease. I don't have the ability. I can't keep on my toes. We have all the stories and more about alcoholism. No matter how much I want to guard myself, no matter how vigilant I am, no matter how many preparatory things I do to watch out for my triggers, I can't keep out of harm's way, and I drink. This minefield, this map that we're going to go on, I go from an insanity in my spirit to a relationship with God. I go from a place where I don't have any trust in God to a place at the end of step 2 where I'm saying, after the cornerstone decision of saying, I'm willing to believe that there's something bigger than me. And by a couple more pages down the line, I'm willing to say, God is everything. God is everything. And I didn't get there easy. I got there from a process of investigation in our lives. I say, how did I do on this physical allergy? How did I do on this mental obsession? If I'm up against all these words that I threw down at the very beginning of our conversation, how in the world am I going to fight off all those old beliefs? How in the world am I going to fight off all those old attitudes? How am I going to wake myself up out of sleep? In the insanity of this thing is it's insane. They're going to make this point because insanity is where they're taking me from to this relationship with God. And in we agnostics, it uses a bunch of of statements. And one of them is that in page 51, the most important thing in my life today is the consciousness of the presence of God in my life. So in other words, the way to say it is, Pat, we're telling you without backhanding you out of the room, we love you. We know that you're sensitive and obstinate, and we know that you're stubborn, but we want to tell you it's plain insanity not to want to live with the consciousness of the presence of God in your life. Pat, it is insane to try to live out your philosophical convictions. It's insane to try to live out your moral code without the power of God. How many times do you have to prove it to yourself, Pat, that you don't have the juice to pull it down? You can't do it. Pat, how many times have you blown up that conversation with your wife, with your husband, with your friends, whoever it is in our lives, and we can't seem to stay out of problems? We're fighting everyone and we're fighting everything. We can't stay out of trouble. We want to live at peace with people, and we can't find a way to be peaceful. Because I got rage going on inside of me. I got fear that's gripping my heart that I can't even move from. It's insanity not to live with God's purpose. You know, on page 50, Bill is admiring people of faith, and he's saying these people once were as confused and baffled as I am, and now on page 50, I'll just, we'll bounce over here real fast. Oh, I'm so excited about this stuff, guys. On page 50, it says, now they're living with power, peace, happiness, a sense of direction. It flowed into them after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. They were once confused and baffled in the futility of existence, the underlying reasons they share with us why their lives are of heavy going. And then they described the way the change came over them. God's going to do some God stuff with us. And the coolest thing about it is we don't have to manufacture it. Folks, I was scared to death when you guys told me the solution was God in forming a vital relationship with God, because I was convinced, and I mean this from my core of my heart, it was every bit as true as knowing that I could never, ever put down the drink, that I could never, ever stop the obsession from killing me. All right? When you told me I needed God, my heart sank. It sank clear into the basement because I was convinced there's no way I could have a relationship with God. There is no way I could form a relationship with God other than mentally trying to buy off on what you're saying, but I couldn't pull it into my heart. I couldn't pull it into my spirit. There's no way I could touch God. I was too broken. I was too defective. I was too off the mark. I was too full of shame. I was too full of guilt. I didn't believe in God's forgiveness. I didn't believe in God's help. I didn't think it was possible. Did anybody ever feel like that? It's a scary place to be, because unless God does some God stuff, we're sunk. Because you know what? I can't even pursue God without God pursuing me. Turn over to page 9 and let's watch God pursue Bill Wilson. Turn over to page 9. Abby shows up on Bill's doorstep, and I'm going to hurry on this so we're good on time here. Let's see here. I got 5:05 on my clock, Eric. I know I'm popping you up here for a second, but you're at 8:05, right?
I am 8:00. Let me see. Yeah, I'm at 8:05
Okay.
right now.
And the meeting goes for till what time?
8:50. You got plenty of time.
No. I want to stop this thing pretty close to about 8:25, so we have plenty of time for sharing. Okay,
Right
so
on,
keep
right
me
on.
on. Keep me on. Okay,
You got it.
it's more
You got it.
important that we share. I want to hear people's reaction to this. I want to see where people are going. So Bill, so Abby, the picture is this: Bill on page 8 saying, "No words can tell the loneliness, despair found in the bitter morass of self-pity and quicksand stretched out in front of me in all directions. I'm overwhelmed by alcohol. It's my master." He emerges out of the hospital. He's a broken man. He had the obsessions on him. He takes the first drink on Veterans Day now. And then he says, in the middle of this paragraph, he says, I'm about, folks, hey, listen, spoiler alert, and it's a good spoiler. I'm about to be catapulted into the fourth dimension of existence, and I ain't coming back. When I'm catapulted, I am released. I am freed from bondage. I am a free man. And he describes it. And he says, I am to know a happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life indescribable, incredibly more wonderful as time passes on. And if we're not having that experience, we're missing the vitality of this relationship with God. We're missing it. And God says, come and get it. Come and get it. I'm here for you. So he emerges from this hospital. Dr. Silkworth has just told him, Bill, you're going to die. You're going to go insane. Your heart's probably going to stop during the DTs if you're lucky. Otherwise, wet brain's going to take you into the asylum. Lois is going to have to make some hard decisions, and you put her there. And I have no solution. I'm the best doc in the land, and there is no way in the world I could stop what's happening to you. Bill, I love you, but I offer you no real solution. What a terrible place. So what does Bill do? He goes home and he starts drinking grapefruit juice and gin. He says, I'm just going to do this deal. There's nothing else I can do. And he can't stop. Ebby is God's rescue plan in Bill's life. Did Bill pick up the phone to call Ebby? No. Ebby picks up the phone to call Bill. Ebby says, Bill, I'm coming over to your house because you're not going to believe what happened in my life. And dude, when I think of all the people in my life that need what I got, you're number one. I'm coming over you because I love you, I care, and I want to offer this up. And Bill's not saying it, and Ebby knows it. Hey, I'm drunk. I can't even form a sentence. Ebby's going, I don't care. I'm coming over anyway because God does God stuff. He doesn't need permission. God's going to do some God stuff here. So he shows up on Bill's front on his kitchen table, and he starts relating on page 9. He says, here's the story. 2 men, Roland Hazard and Shep Graves, actually third, and Seaber Graves, they persuade Seaber's pop, the judge, suspend the sentence. We're going to give him the same Oxford group treatment that we got. Page 9, the bottom paragraph. And you know what? The results are unbelievable. It works. And then Ebby says, they gave me this treatment, and 2 months later, Bill, it's self-evident. It worked. I'm sober. I can't even believe it. He had come to pass on this experience that I'd have, and Bill saying, of course, I'm going to be interested. I have to be because I'm hopeless. Page 10. And then as he's going through this, what I want to take note of is the following couple conversations. He's saying to Ebby, I don't know if I'm buying what you're throwing down yet. I just don't know. And so we're going to go through this. So on page 10, he listens to Ebby's experience in paragraph 1. He talked for hours. And Ebby is laying down for him his God experience. And Bill's reflecting on his own God or no God experience in his own life. And he's thinking, well, Ebby's talking about this personal God experience. I'm relating a little bit. I had this Sunday afternoon kind of thing going on with my grandfather, and I'm listening to some of these proffered temperate pledges and these preachers, but I'm not really buying it. Neither is my grandfather. And then he's reflecting on all of his experiences, and his initial experience with God is, I don't buy it, Ebby. I'm not quite down with that. And by the way, that's what happens with us. Folks, your story of how you've created a vital relationship with God is so important to share with another alcoholic that you're working with. They need to know. You got to lift up the curtain. You got to share with them your honest doubts and prejudice. You got to share with them where you were. You got to share with them what happened. It's not about them buying off on your concept of God. It's about the fact that they buy off that you have a concept of God and you've made conscious contact with this God. You formed a vital relationship with God. You have a companionship with God, which is vital in changing everything in your life. They got to know that. That's what Bill T., my sponsor in Denver, Colorado, said to me. It helped change my life. And he asked me a question, Pat, what would you see in a friend? And he asked me to form ideas about what I thought a friendship would be with God. And that's another story. But, there's going to be some ways for each of us to communicate our relationship with God as we understand God to another human being that's suffering. Don't forget that. You're God's link. And so then he formulates his current old idea of God on paragraph 3 when he says, listen, I pondered all these things. I'm not really an atheist. I believe there's some kind of power out there. I was not an atheist. This is the third paragraph. Actually, well, yeah, third paragraph. And then he says, you know what? I sort of buy what the astronomers and evolutionists, I'm sort of a scientific guy, Evie. And so I really do buy there's some vast laws out there. There's some forces at work that I can't explain there's a mighty rhythm underlaying all. There's some precise, immutable laws that I see active in science. I can't refute that. I also think that there's some intelligence out there. In fact, I think you could probably loosely, Ebby, I go along with you and call it a spirit of the universe. I'm okay with that. I could do that. So this is his old idea of God. I emphasize the word old. Bill has no solution in his life, and this is his current view of God. How much impact is his old view of God doing for Bill right now in his life? And I don't mean that as a bad thing. Do I believe these are aspects of God? You bet. God is either everything or God is nothing. Is the God that I serve today, is my God intelligent? Absolutely. Does he cover the entire universe and then some, whatever I can't even fathom? Yes. Is he beautiful in his rhythm of life? You bet. Does he have immutable laws? Does he have precise? Is he outside of time? Is he outside of limitations? You bet. But he's more than that. He's got to be bigger. He's got to be more. So Bill's forming this idea. And then he's fighting for this personal concept of God that Ebby's throwing down at the bottom of page 10. He's still wrestling with Ebby, and that's okay. Wrestle with your concept of God. It's okay. Spend some time. Ebby, you're telling me that God is personal, that he's loving, that he's superhuman in strength and direction. Ebby, my mind is snapping shut. Can you hear it? It's shut, Ebby. Don't talk to me anymore about this personal God experience. I don't get it. I haven't had it. It's not possible. It's only a theory, Ebby. You're just crazy. That's really what Bill's saying. Ebby, you're talking about Jesus Christ, Oxford Group. You're talking about all this stuff with Christ. I don't buy it. I'm going to not say that he's God of the universe. I'm going to say that he's just a good moral teacher. He's wrestling with the very things that Ebby's throwing down. Do I think that Bill got it right on the top of page 11? No, but that's not the point. The point is he is wrestling with his concept of God. He's wrestling with, can God be personal and can God change my life? Then he's going to listen to more of Ebby's witness on the third paragraph on page 11. Well, actually, in the second paragraph of page 11, this is super important. Bill's finally saying in the second paragraph, his current assessment of a spiritual way of life, it doesn't exist, Ebby. A spiritual way of life is not possible. Look, I got back from World War I. It was an utter disaster. Mustard gas, people dying, no man's land. There was no love of man. There was no brotherhood of man. It was a grim jest. If there is any power out there, Ebby, it's the devil. And this is an accurate thing that Bill threw down. He seemed to be the boss universal in Bill's life, and he certainly had me. I want to tell you guys, spiritual malady is evil. It's evil. And only God can break the bonds of this spiritual malady. Mental therapy is helpful. Understanding and psychological counseling can be helpful, but the bondage that is killing us cannot be broken without the power and love of God. You get me on that? Thumbs up, sideways, turn the camera off. You're crazy. All right, here we go. He certainly had me. And then Ebby does the coolest thing in the universe. And you and I, we get to do this all day long. We don't have to defend our view of God. Listen, people know that I stand for Christ. They know that, okay? I don't have to defend Christ in rooms of AA. I don't. God does a perfectly good job defending himself, all right? I don't have to get in the way, you know? is sort of like a little kid. Step back, Dad, I got this. And the dad's looking at the this little kid going, honey, just step behind me. I got this. Don't worry. And what he's got is this. God loves our hearts. God loves us. He created us. He's going to find a way to reach us. Don't worry about it. God reaches us all. I didn't believe it was possible, and God reached me. I'm in love with God today. That could not have been possible without the love of God being poured in me first. And Ebby says, Bill, I don't know what to tell you, man. I hear all the things you're saying. I hear those are all really good arguments, Bill. I hear you loud and clear. But you know what? God's done for me what I couldn't do for myself. I was failing just like you, Bill. There is no hope. Doctors have pronounced me incurable. They're going to throw me in the asylum, just like they're getting ready to throw you in the asylum. Society's ready to lock them up. You admitted complete defeat. Bill, I was on the scrap heap. And God has done the impossible. He's taken me from the scrap heap of life, and I know a life today better than I've ever known. I don't know what to tell you, Bill. It's just the way it is. It's a fact. And so he listens to more witnesses, and then he concludes the following thing in the 4th paragraph of page 11. Had this power, now listen to this word, he wasn't any longer talking to Ebby from a position of argument. He wasn't on concept. He wasn't on themes. He wasn't on theory. He's just listening to what Ebby is saying, and he concludes in his spirit, he could sense and he could see he's witnessing the very power of God. To heck with his old belief system, to heck with his scientific approach. What he's saying is, had this power originated in him? Obviously not. Obviously. He said to himself, there's no more power in Ebby than there was in me. There was none of this. This was not done by Ebby. I want some of this stuff. Whatever Ebby's got, I want some. And it floored Bill, the second to last paragraph. I began to look at these religious people. Maybe they're right. Here was something, listen to this. Here was something at work in the human heart. God changed my heart. God rescue my heart. Do some God stuff in my heart. Here was some stuff working in the human heart which had done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then and there. Here sat across from me a miracle, and it shouts great tidings. You know what that means? He's coming home to the cabin with God. He's coming home to a fireplace with 2 rocking chairs. He's coming home to a God that's been there all along. He says, I've been holding this chair for you your entire life. And no, you're not too late. You're right on time. You're right on time. Wherever you are tonight, you are right on time. God doesn't make mistakes, and God is never late. He says in conclusion on page 12, he says, you know what? Ebby's not just inwardly reorganized. This isn't some kind of fancy group therapy. This isn't, and by the way, I'm not ever speaking against therapy. I'm not ever speaking against psychological counseling. Quite the contrary. There's deep hurt, there's deep harms, there's deep victimization that's happened in our lives that bring us into these rooms. Oh, for sure, go get some help. Oh, for sure, seek outside counsel. It's in the big book. Go after it. But he's saying that what he's observing in Ebby's life, it's not reorganization. He's saying he's on different footing. I mean, the foundation of his life has been radically made new. He's not the same guy. His roots, in other words, his soul structure is grasping new soil, the very soil of God, the very nutrients of God, the very love of God, the very direction of God, the very counsel of God. His roots are grasping new soil. And he says, you know, and then he makes, okay, but hear me out. We're not quite done. On 12, he fights back one more time, despite the living example of my friends. Is this not page 55 out of the big book, paragraph 1, where I'm fighting one last time? I see their change has happened, and I'm going to deny it. It's insanity in the mind. I see the very change that's changed this man, and I deny the change has changed him. And he says, I see in my living example of my friend But there remains to me the vestiges, old traces, my old prejudice. He can't rid himself without the power of God of his prejudice. The word God still aroused a certain antipathy, distaste. When he thought of this God personal to me, the feeling was intensified after he just got done listening to Ebby say, look what's happened to my life. You want it. Yes, I do. I want what you have. I see it's real, but I can't go for it. I can't get there, Ebby. I can't believe that this personal relationship with God can happen. I don't like the idea, Ebby. You know why? Because it means I have to trust some God instead of me. And the core of my disease, selfish self-centeredness, is a rebellion against God himself. I say to God, I will die running my life. I will die in my swamp of self-pity and morass. And that's where it's an incredible statement of insanity. Can you see the insanity of what Bill's saying? Can you see that? He sees that it's real in Ebby's life. He's seen that Ebby has formed a vital personal relationship with God. He sees that God has changed Ebby. He sees that Ebby's on new footing. He sees that his life grasps new soil, and yet he's saying it's not real, and I don't buy the idea. He steps back and he says, I'm going to go for creative intelligence, universal mind, spirit of nature. And here's the linchpin. Here's why he can't go for what Ebby's saying. And this is the very power and love of God that does God stuff. He says in the first full paragraph on page 12, but I resisted the thought of a czar of the heavens. That's a fancy label for king of the heavens, king of the universe. Czar is ruler. However loving his sway is a fancy word for rule. I can't get there to believe that I have to give my life to the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the power of God. I can't quite get there, no matter how loving that I see you tell me, Ebby, that God is. I don't know what to do with it. I don't care. His love, yeah, I see the love that you're throwing down, but I can't quite get there. And then Bill says the coolest thing ever. He says, I've since talked to many scores of men who had felt the same way. So if you're feeling a sense of your chest gets tight, your tongue, your mouth goes dry when you start thinking about the very rule of God in your life, that is going to give you direction, give you guidance, give you agency on behalf of God himself, but you're no longer in charge of your life, that you're going to make a decision later on about turning your will and your life over the care of God as you understand God. Yes, it screams in the face of our rebelliousness, and it's an okay place to be. That's where Bill was at. And Ebby gave him he gave him an out. Bill, don't be where I'm at in my belief with God. Be where you're at with your belief with God. Choose your own conception. The misnomer in AA is that gives us license to pick 2,700 different gods. That is not what Bill is saying. And I'm going to end our conversation in just a few minutes on page 58 and 59, telling you exactly where we get this hope and where we get this help. But it's your own current conception of God, wherever it starts. And I'm firmly convinced that when I lay it down for God and I say, God, the best I can do with who I think you are is this, this, and this. God says, thumbs up, Pat. I buy it. I'm in. I love you. We'll start there. God didn't say, no, come back in about 20 years when you got me all figured out. Nope. I'll start where you're at, Pat. I love you. There's no place you're at that I can't start, Pat. Just turn to me. The statement hit Bill hard and melted the icy intellectual mountain. I don't have to figure God out to do this deal. I stood in the sunlight at last. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. At long last, I felt, I believed the scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes. A new world's coming into view. How come? Because Bill is knowing for the first time what's always been there. He's connecting the dots. I didn't seek Ebby out. Abby sought me out. That was a God event in my life. And all of a sudden, I'm turning to God and I'm finding out that God was there all along. And when I turn to God, I'm convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want him enough. That's also code for I didn't want God at all, but God was still there. But now I'm waking up to the fact that God's going to do some God stuff in my life. I'm coming home. Do you get me on that? God's not capricious. God's not standoffish. God's not sitting there like a little kid, 11-year-old kid throwing a temper tantrum. Well, you don't love me. You don't know me. So therefore, I'm not going to talk to you. That's not God. Pat, I love you. I know you've been throwing the middle finger up at me. I know you've been yelling at people that believe in me and you're telling them they're fools. I know that you've been trying to trash talk every time you could any person of faith when you first came in these rooms. I know that you were so mad at me that you were spitting. I take it all. I take it all, son, because I can't live eternity without you. I got to have you home with me. Got to have you home with me. Now, folks, this is a step 2 experience. So I'm going to finish off with this. And then we're done. We're going to get out of here on this, okay? Bear with me on page 52 of the bedevilments. I want to take this back over to the bedevilments, okay? Why is this so important? Page 52, and we can spend weeks on this, but page 52 in these bedevilments saying, Pat, your old ideas don't work. You got to have new ones, but you can't get there without God. My personal relationships are jacked up. So my experience with this spiritual malady, this selfish self-centeredness, is that I am alienating myself from all other human beings and human relationship. I can't control my internal state, my internal emotional nature. Not the thing I put on the outside, everything's happy and free and everything's fine. No, I'm talking about the voices going off in my head in the morning and late at night when no one's watching there. And I'm saying to myself, I'm a piece of garbage. I'm a piece of, I have no reason for even living. I don't even know why I keep on trying. Maybe it'll be better tomorrow. It wasn't any better tomorrow. Maybe I'll try the 3rd day, but if it's not any good, I'm going to commit suicide. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go into the darkness. I'm going to go into the dungeon. I'm going to go into the torture chamber because I can't get out of my own internal way of emotional nature. I've lost purpose in my life. I don't have the purpose of those people on page 50. I am full of misery when I look around because I can't see God's purpose. I can't see God's hand in anything. I can't see God's direction. I'm without direction. I'm without purpose. I'm miserable. I've lost my own identity. I'm full of depression. I cannot get out of my own way. I hate my life. I hate everything about my life. I can't seem to find my way out of depression. I can't make a living. I have no vision. I have no dreams. I have no results. I'm feeling useless. I don't have any significance. I have no value because I don't know who I am in my Father's house. I'm full of fear. Got voices in my head. I know self-reliance fails me. Don't tell me that one more time. I know it fails me, but I don't have a solution. Don't you understand? I have no way out. I'm unhappy. I'm restless. I'm irritable and discontent. I can't seem to be of real help to others. I have no service. I have no contribution. I have no connection because I can't bring anybody to God because I can't find my way to God. And it impacts my 7 areas of self in the inventory: self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, pocketbook. We don't have time to talk about it, but I'm going to tell you one thing. Keep this thought in mind. If my self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal and sex relations, pocketbook are founded on the consciousness of the presence of God, will that impact my self-esteem? Pat, I'm watching you. I got you. I got army of angels all around you, man. You're my guy. You're a masterpiece. I put you together. You're not a mistake. How does that do for our self-esteem? Pride? Do I really care that some people don't like you and some people don't accept you? I'm God of the universe, and I've laid down everything for you. You're mine. You're mine. Ambition? How's that going to affect every situation? God, I'm here to do whatever you want me to do because I see you're the deal. God, let me do some God stuff with you. Page 49 of the big book says, I want to be an intelligent agent of God. I want to be a spearhead of God's ever-advancing creation, not Pat's any longer. I could go on and on. I'm going to end with this one statement out of, this is a weird one. It takes an insane choice to break out of insanity. When I'm in insanity, it seems insane to turn my will, my life, or turn to this God is everything or God is nothing. My choice, God is everything, because it feels insane. It doesn't feel familiar yet. It takes almost an insane choice to break out of insanity, and God powers us to do so. I love you guys. Thanks for letting me share.